It's embarrassing to admit, but I've gained 10 pounds. So let's talk about this episode, what it means to steward the body. If you're new here, hi, I'm Magnolia, a wife and homeschooling mom of two. I'm building a brand and editorial design studio in the margins of my day. I used to think I was too late. I'm building anyway. This is in the margin. I'm going to be really honest. The biggest thing that I've struggled with in this season of building in the margins is actually stewarding my body well. I've been finding it extremely difficult to work out, to drink as much water as I should, sleep as well as I should, and to eat as well as I should. And the first few months when I was really building and everything felt like a time crunch, my priorities were not in exercising, my priority was not in sleeping, and my priority was not in eating well. It was in overcoming my limiting beliefs and getting myself started and acquiring clients so that I could, really start building my business. Well, here we are 6 months later, and I've gained 10 pounds. 10 pounds because I have not been taking care of the temple that God gave me to take care of. Yes, building my business is important. Yes, taking care of my children is important. Yes, homeschooling them is important. Yes, taking care of my husband and being with him is important. But taking care of myself as number one is the most important task on my to-do list. And I failed over and over and over again. And this is actually something that I talked about with my coach, Krista, on a regular basis. She would be like, well, what are your priorities? And I'm like, well, I want to hear my diastasis recti and I want to, lose about 5 pounds because this was in February, I was only 5 pounds over. And now in July, I'm 10 pounds over, actually 15 pounds now over my ideal weight. I was 5 then in February, and now in July, I'm 15 pounds over my ideal weight. And that crushes me because eating nourishing foods, sleeping well, drinking water are all the major priorities of mine. And I just let them slip through the cracks. And I always beat myself up over it because I felt like I should be doing it all. And I knew all these things were important. And I just kept letting myself down. And then one day during one of our coaching sessions, Krista asked me to actually list out my priorities. And then we were able to see where exercising really was. It was 65% taking care of my family, 45% work, 10% God, and then socializing, sleeping, hanging out with friends, and exercise all the way at the bottom. And once we actually did that exercise and I saw how far down exercise really was on my priority list, I then knew why I never really got around to it because I put it last on my to-do list. Well, in this season of internal stewardship, it's important for me to take on that external stewardship as well. For the last month, I have been working out. I am so proud of myself. I've been waking up. My ideal goal is 5 a.m. I've been waking up around 6:30, but I wake up, I do a Pilates workout, and then I go for a jog walk. And it has been so helpful to me to put that self-care of myself all the way at the beginning of the day because it sets the tempo for the rest of my day. And the only reason I have been able to establish that morning routine is because of the book I talked about a few episodes ago called Good Morning, Good Life. For years, I struggled with actually developing a morning routine. And it wasn't until I read this book where she actually laid it out so simply that I've actually been able to maintain a morning routine. And I am so proud of myself because in this season of building in the margin, I felt like I had no margin for working out. I felt I had no margin for scripture. I felt I had no margin to just spend time with myself because I was giving it all to my business growth, to my children, and my husband. And that's not true. And through that book, I was able to realize, well, if I want to do these things for myself, I need to carve out the time for them. And I do that now. And the 3 principles in a morning routine are mindset, movement, and mastery. And when she laid out that morning routine to be that simple, it opened up my mornings in such a beautiful way. Now I wake up and I work out. I do 20 minutes of Pilates. I do a 10-minute diastasis recti exercise, 5 minutes of stomach vacuum, and then I go for a walk jog for about 20 minutes. So right there, that's an hour that I've carved out for myself myself that I set aside every day. And I don't have an hour every single day. Sometimes I have less, so I'll just shorten it and I'll get rid of the walk jog or maybe the diastasis recti exercises. But I'm including movement into every single morning. The next thing that I do is mindset. This is where I set aside 5 to 10 minutes to do a tapping and then to actually read scripture, to set my day and to set the tone for the day. And I'll sit and I'll journal for a few minutes. And it has been so helpful. And, depending on the amount of time, I may shorten or lengthen, but just knowing that I'm going to wake up and do these two things already makes me feel like I am tackling the day in the best way possible. And then the last one is mastery. And this is where I set aside time to work on my business. And for a long time, what I did was I used that time to get ahead on my client work. But now I'm actually switching that and I'm using that time to actually work on my own business, because I've noticed that if I leave the work that I have to do for my own business to the end of the day or just one day a week, it doesn't get done because the amount of client work that I have is so time consuming, but I will not grow my business if I don't spend time in my own business. So setting aside 20 minutes to an hour in the morning to engage on socials, to create some content, to reach out to people really helps me know that I am actually setting up first things first. God, my body, my business. And then the rest of the day is now open for everything else. And I don't feel like I am behind on everything. The next thing that I've been working on is actually eating more healthy foods. I already normally eat very healthy, but I started relying on more bread and more sandwiches and more pizza because those things are quicker to make and I always have flour on hand. Well, it's summertime, it's really hot, I feel really heavy, and we've shifted to doing more salads and more grilled meats. And it's just been so helpful because I now know that I'm like adding nourishing meals to my plate. Another thing that I'm doing is cutting back a little bit on the sourdough bread, even though it's really healthy for you. It is still bread, that's still a lot of carbs, and I'm adding other fermented foods. I actually started my own sauerkraut and I am so excited. This is the third day of it fermenting and it should only take about 5 days in the summer. So in the next episode, I'll give an update as to how that sauerkraut went. But I'm just really excited because I know the importance of healing your gut. I know the importance of eating probiotic rich foods. My son is allergic to yogurt. We love kombucha, and that is definitely on my list of foods to learn how to make. But that just seems to me like expert level versus sauerkraut and sourdough were like more beginner level. So I'm making my way through the fermented list of foods to make. And I'm just really excited because, being able to add homemade sauerkraut to my meals in the morning, afternoon, and evenings is really just going to add to my family's nutrition. We're also a big juicing family, but juicing does take some time. And since I've been working a lot more, I have not been juicing as much, but that's something that I'm making it a priority to put back into my schedule. I'm somebody who kind of just like decides to do something and then I do it. I am not much of a planner, and I know that is the me that needs to die so that the woman that I envision myself to be can live and to thrive. And one of the things that I'm working on is really planning and scheduling my weeks, so planning meals ahead of time, thinking through what does my family need, what do we need to buy, what kind of trips we need to plan, so that I can schedule that all in. And I will share in coming episodes how I actually structure my day so that I can tackle everything that is on my ever-growing to-do list. Sleep is another area that I actually really have sacrificed these last few months. And it's a little embarrassing to say because you kind of want to show up on these channels and be like, I've got it all figured out. I know how to build a business with margins. I know how to show up for my children. I know how to show up for myself. And that's not true. I have been letting my own self fall through the crack because I've been wanting to maintain all of the other things. And now I'm making it a priority to take care of myself as well. Because like I said, if I'm not running well, it doesn't matter that any of the other things that I'm doing, they're all going to fall through the crack anyways. And sleep has been something that I have sacrificed. Going to sleep late, waking up early. And, after 2 or 3 days, I see it. I'm not as young as I used to be. So I see my body lagging. I feel tired. I've been getting a lot of headaches and I don't want to live that way anymore. So I'm making it a really strong priority that everybody in my house is in bed by 8:30. We're all sleeping by 9 so that we can wake up in the morning, get our hours and be refreshed. And some days we hit that 8:30. Some days we're up a little bit still later, but at least like we're conscientiously moving towards more sleep and more rest. We bought blackout curtains, so we're going to put those up in our room. We actually went home home to South Carolina last week, and we have like a darker bedroom there. And I actually felt the difference in sleeping in a darker room than we do here. So that is like one of our top priorities, is to put up our blackout curtains so that we could sleep better. The other thing that I struggle with is actually drinking enough water throughout the day. I think we all struggle with that. So I bought myself, a water cup, and I fill it up throughout the day to make sure that I'm always drinking. But, I think that as moms, we make it such a habit to put everybody else ahead of ourselves. And that's not really good in the long run, because, you don't see it in the day to day. You don't see what's happening on the inside. You don't feel your body lagging and running ragged until 5, 10, 15 years down the line. And we don't have to live that way. But, make yourself a priority. You are important. Your body is your own temple, and nobody's going to take care of it like you are or for you. So, like, really analyze your day. Like, I analyzed my day when I sat down with Krista and we made that priority list, and I actually saw where exercise and sleep fell on my list. It was like shocking to me, because I always thought it was higher. But being honest with yourself as to where yourself, like, these things fall on your list of priorities in the day is really helpful. And some of the tricks that I've heard that I haven't really put into practice yet, but I think like was a really smart idea, was to actually list out all the things that you believe are, constitute as proper self-care or soul care, and then just pick 3 for that day and then cycle through. So for example, let's say you make a list of 9 things that you believe are what you need to really take care of yourself. So then on day 1, you would do the first 3. On day 2, you would do the next 3. And then on day 3, you would do the last 3. And then on day 4, you would go back to the first list, so that you're always cycling through all the items on your self-care list, so that like, okay, on Monday and, day 1 and day 4, I'm working out. On day 2 and day 5, sleeping, 10 hours or whatever it is. And I think that's such a genius idea, because then nothing is falling off your list. And it's just, a rolling list of you always taking care of yourself and taking care of everything that you have. Because as moms, we have a million things that we're doing at once, and a million things that we want to be doing and taking care of. But, we always let ourselves fall in that process. And tell me, like, while you're building in the margins, what is something that you've noticed looking back at these, the last 2 quarters, because we're in quarter 3, what have you been noticing just like falling through the cracks in your own personal self-care routine? And what can you do to help bring it back? Share in the comments, because you might have something in your routine that helps somebody else, and somebody else might have something that helps in their routine. And I really want to build a community of all of women. Like, we're all building something in the margins, and it's very lonely out here. And I would love to build, a space for us to come together and to really talk and really share about the real struggles and the real hardships. Like, coming to you guys and admitting that I gained 10 pounds is a little embarrassing. That is so hard for me to think through and look through and just admit, but I've been really sedentary these last 5 months. So of course that's going to contribute to me putting on more weight, which is really difficult. Please share in the comments if you liked this episode. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for taking the time to come with me.